In the far reaches of the galaxy, among the many stars and planets, a small, nearly forgotten species struggled to survive. The Valorians, a peaceful race with advanced technology, had once thrived on their beautiful homeworld. However, over time, their planet began to wither. The once lush forests were now barren deserts. Rivers that used to flow freely had dried up, and the air, once crisp and fresh, had grown thick with pollutants. The Valorians had tried everything they could think of to save their planet. They had used their technology to repair the environment, to fix the problems they faced. But it was no use. Their planet was dying. The Federation of Planets, a large and powerful alliance of species, looked away. They had the resources to help, the technology to reverse the damage, but they refused to intervene. The Valorians were seen as too small and insignificant to matter in the grand scale of the galaxy. Their plight was just another disaster that no one had the time or energy to care about. For years, the Valorians had begged for help. Their leaders had sent countless messages to the Federation, to every known species, pleading for assistance. But every message was ignored. Every cry for help went unanswered. The galaxy had turned its back on them. It was during this time of despair that a single human ship, the Eclipse, received the Valorians' desperate message. Commander Jax Riker, the captain of the Eclipse, had been monitoring deep space communications when he stumbled upon the Valorians' transmission. It wasn't like the usual distress signals. There was a sense of finality in the words. The Valorians were not asking for help anymore. They were begging for it. Their planet was on the verge of collapse, and they were willing to do anything to survive. Commander Riker was no stranger to seeing others suffer. He had grown up on Earth, a planet that had known hardship and struggle. Humanity had once faced its own extinction, but they had fought back. They had found a way to survive. He believed that if humanity could overcome such odds, there was no reason why the Valorians couldn't be saved too. Jax sat in his command chair, staring at the flickering message on the screen. His crew was silent, waiting for his decision. The message had been a plea for help, but the Federation had made it clear that any interference would not be tolerated. The galaxy had a policy. No species was allowed to interfere in the struggles of others. It was a rule designed to prevent endless conflicts. The Valorians were not important enough to risk breaking that rule. But Commander Riker couldn't shake the feeling that this was the right thing to do. His instincts told him that humanity couldn't just stand by while another race was left to perish. He looked around at his crew, men and women from all walks of life. From every corner of Earth, they had all come together to explore the stars, to see the universe. And now, they had a chance to make a real difference. He knew that if they ignored this plea, they would never forgive themselves. "Set a course for Valoria," Jax said, his voice steady and firm. "We're going to help them." The crew exchanged glances, some unsure, others excited by the possibility. They knew the risks. They knew what the Federation would think of their decision, but they also knew that they couldn't turn away. Not when there was still a chance to save a world. The Eclipse's engines roared to life as they set off toward the distant Valorian homeworld. The journey would take several weeks, and during that time, Jax and his crew prepared themselves for what they might find. They gathered the resources they would need to help the Valorians: advanced technology, medical supplies, and engineers who could help with the planet's repair. But even as they prepared, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that they might be too late. Valoria's situation was dire, and the galaxy had already turned its back on them. Along the way, Jax kept thinking about the message. The desperation in the Valorians' voices, the fear of knowing that time was running out. He thought about the endless galaxy, full of life, and yet so many species had forgotten the importance of compassion. They were too focused on power, on control, to care about a dying race that had no political value. But humanity was different. Humanity had learned the importance of compassion and unity, even after the scars of their own past. Jax Riker believed that the actions of one species could change the fate of the universe. He didn't know how, but he was determined to try. As the eclipse sped through the vastness of space, Jax couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. If humanity could help the Valorians, maybe they could inspire other species to do the same. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could learn to care again. The eclipse moved closer to the dying planet, and with each passing day, the crew of the ship grew more determined. They were not just embarking on a rescue mission. They were about to take their first steps toward changing the galaxy for the better. And they wouldn't look away. Not this time. The journey to Valoria was long and filled with uncertainty. The eclipse glided through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly as the crew prepared for what lay ahead. Commander Jax Riker stood on the bridge, gazing out into the stars, his mind racing with thoughts of the mission. The message from the Valorians had been clear. Their planet was dying, and their people were on the brink of extinction. Yet the rest of the galaxy had ignored their cry for help. As the eclipse moved further into uncharted space, Jax felt the weight of the decision that had brought them here. The Federation had made it clear that no one was to interfere with the affairs of other species, and yet here they were, heading into the heart of a crisis that others had abandoned. He knew the risks. If they were caught by the galactic authorities, they would face severe consequences. The Federation would not tolerate any challenge to their rules. Despite the dangers, Jax couldn't turn back. The thought of the Valorians suffering alone, with no one to help them, was unbearable. Humanity had once been on the edge of extinction, but they had fought back. They had rebuilt their world from the ashes of destruction. They understood what it meant to fight for survival, and they had a responsibility to help those who were in need. "Captain, we're nearing the Valorian system," Lieutenant Aria Mendez, the ship's navigator, called out from her station. "We'll arrive within the next few hours." Jax nodded and turned to face her. "Keep us on course, Lieutenant. Let's make sure we're prepared for anything." The crew had been working tirelessly in the days leading up to their arrival. Engineers had been double-checking the ship's systems to ensure that everything was running smoothly. Medical personnel had prepared supplies to help the Valorians, from basic medical kits to advanced technology that could help stabilize their environment. It was a race against time, and there was no room for mistakes. "I've been studying the Valorian transmissions," said Dr. Elias Turner, the ship's lead scientist. "Their planet is in worse shape than we thought. The atmosphere is deteriorating, and the oceans are turning toxic. Their crops are failing, and they have no way to fix it themselves." Jax listened carefully, feeling the pressure mounting. "So, what's the plan when we arrive?" "We'll need to assess the situation on the ground first," Dr. Turner replied. "We can't just show up and expect to fix everything with a few gadgets. We'll need to understand the root of the problem and work with the Valorians to find a sustainable solution." "We'll do whatever it takes," Jax said firmly. "But remember, we're not just here to save a planet. We're here to give them hope." The crew's spirits were high, but there was a sense of unease in the air. Even though they had prepared for every possible scenario, no one truly knew what they would find when they reached Valoria. Would the Valorians welcome them with open arms, or would they view the humans as just another group of outsiders with empty promises? Would they be able to repair the damage in time to save the planet? As the eclipse drew closer to Valoria, the tension among the crew began to grow. They were about to make first contact with a species on the verge of collapse. Every decision they made from this point on would have a lasting impact. Jax gathered his senior officers in the briefing room to go over the final preparations. He looked around the table at his team, each of them dedicated and skilled in their own right. They were more than just a crew. They were a family. Together, they had traveled the stars, faced countless challenges, and overcome the odds time and time again. Now, they were about to embark on the most important mission of their lives. "We've all read the reports," Jax began, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "The Valorians are desperate. Their planet is dying, and their people are on the brink of extinction. Our mission is to help them, to do what no one else will. This isn't just about saving a planet. It's about showing the galaxy that we won't turn away when someone needs help. We'll be entering a hostile environment, Lieutenant Mendez warned. The Federation might come after us. They've made it clear that they don't want us interfering. We know the risks, Jack said, but we can't let fear stop us from doing what's right. If we don't help, who will? The room fell silent as the crew absorbed Jack's words. They all knew the stakes. They had all signed up for this, knowing that they might face consequences. But in the end, they understood that saving the Valorians was worth any risk. As the briefing ended, the crew went back to their stations, preparing for the final approach to Valoria. The planet loomed in the distance, its surface scarred by years of neglect and environmental decay. It was a heartbreaking sight, but it was also a reminder of why they were there. Humanity had faced extinction once before, and now it was their turn to offer hope to those who had nowhere else to turn. The eclipse continued its approach, and as they neared the planet, the crew knew that their journey had only just begun. There was much work to be done, and time was running out. But they were ready. Humanity had stepped in to save the Valorians, and they would not back down now. The eclipse entered the Valorian system with cautious determination. As they approached the planet, Jack Riker stood on the bridge, watching the massive blue and green world growing larger in the viewport. The once vibrant oceans and green continents were now dotted with barren lands and fading seas. The planet's atmosphere was thick and clouded with smog. It was clear that the planet was on the edge of collapse, but there was still life here, however fragile it might be. "We've entered the atmosphere," Lieutenant Mendez said, her voice steady, though there was an underlying tension. "Preparing to land near the capital city." Jax nodded. "Good. Let's make sure everything is ready." The crew had spent days preparing for this moment. Every member of the team had rehearsed their roles, and each had an understanding of what needed to be done. But no amount of preparation could prepare them for the emotional weight of seeing the Valorians up close, to meet the people they had come to save. As the eclipse descended into the atmosphere, Jax turned to his crew. "Remember, our goal is to help. We're here to offer a lifeline, not to impose ourselves. Let's make sure the Valorians see us as allies, not invaders." The ship's landing gear thudded softly as it made contact with the ground. The crew quickly gathered their supplies and prepared to disembark. The moment of truth had arrived. The Valorians were waiting, but Jax wasn't sure what to expect. Would they welcome them with open arms, or would they be too far gone, too broken to trust anyone? The air outside was thick with pollution, but as the crew stepped onto the surface of the planet, they were struck by the eerie silence. There were no sounds of animals, no birds chirping in the distance. It was as if the planet itself had lost its voice. The only sounds were the low hum of the eclipse's engines and the soft footsteps of the crew. Ahead of them, a group of Valorian representatives stood waiting. They were tall and graceful, with delicate features and shimmering skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Their eyes were full of sorrow, and they watched the humans with a mixture of hope and hesitation. These were the last of their people, and they had been holding on for so long, waiting for help that never came. Jack stepped forward, extending his hand in greeting. He knew this moment was crucial. This was the first interaction between humanity and the Valorians. How they approached this first meeting would set the tone for everything that followed. "I'm Commander Jax Riker of the Eclipse," he said, his voice calm and steady. "We've come to help." The Valorian leader, a tall female with silver hair, stepped forward. Her face was tired, but there was a glimmer of something, perhaps relief, in her eyes. She studied Jax for a long moment before speaking. "You are human?" she asked, her voice soft, but laced with disbelief. Jax nodded. "Yes. We've come to offer you our help. We know your planet is in crisis, and we have the resources to assist." For a long moment, the Valorians stood in silence. They exchanged looks with one another, communicating in a way that Jax could not understand. It was clear that they were unsure whether to trust these strangers who had appeared out of nowhere. The Valorians had been let down by so many in the past. Would the humans truly be different, or would they be another species looking to take advantage of their desperation? Finally, the leader spoke again. You speak of help, but our planet is dying. We have nothing left. What can you offer that we have not already tried? Jax's heart sank at her words. The pain in her voice was unmistakable. She had heard empty promises before, and it was clear that she no longer believed in the possibility of salvation. But Jax wasn't going to give up that easily. We have advanced technology, he said. We can help restore your environment, clean your atmosphere, purify your water. We can provide medical aid and help rebuild your cities. But most importantly, we can offer hope. It's not too late for you. The Valorian leader looked at him for a long time, as if weighing his words. Finally, she nodded slowly. Perhaps we will see. But I'd warn you, human, if you fail us, the cost will be greater than you can imagine. Jax understood the gravity of her words. If they failed, the Valorians' extinction would be a certainty. But he wasn't about to give up. Humanity had been through its own struggles, its own crises, and time again, they had found a way to survive. If there was even the smallest chance that they could save the Valorians, they would do whatever it took. I understand, Jax said, but I promise you, we will not fail. We will work with you every step of the way. The Valorian leader looked at her people, then back at Jax. For the first time in a long while, there was a spark of something, maybe hope, in her eyes. She stepped closer to him, her voice quieter now. I will trust you, human. But remember, if you betray that trust, you will not just be saving our planet. You will be saving us all. Jax nodded, understanding the weight of her words. This was no longer just about saving a planet. It was about saving an entire civilization, and humanity was their last hope. We will not betray you, Jax promised. Together, we can rebuild. And so, the first step had been taken. The Eclipse had landed, the Valorians had agreed to work with them, and the mission to save a dying world had begun. But Jax knew that this was just the beginning. There was still so much to do, so many challenges to face, but for the first time in a long time, there was hope in the air. The days after their first contact with the Valorians were filled with urgency and careful planning. The Eclipse had landed on Valoria's surface, and the crew quickly set to work. There was no time to waste. Every moment counted. The planet's atmosphere was deteriorating faster than they had anticipated, and the damage was spreading quickly. The Valorians were relying on the humans, and Jax Riker could feel the weight of their trust on his shoulders. The crew had been divided into teams to tackle different aspects of the crisis. Dr. Elias Turner led a group focused on studying the planet's ecosystem to determine the best course of action to restore it. Lieutenant Aria Mendez and her team of engineers worked tirelessly to repair the environmental control systems, which had been in disrepair for years. And Commander Riker himself worked closely with the Valorian leadership, coordinating efforts and offering human expertise. Jax had spent countless hours with the Valorian leader, a dignified woman named Severin. She was wise, though wary, and her people were as exhausted as she was. They had fought for years against their planet's decline, but without help, their efforts had been futile. Now they had no choice but to put their trust in these humans who had arrived from across the stars. Commander Riker, Severin said one evening as they stood together outside the Valorian capital, looking over the remains of what was once a bustling city. Do you truly believe you can save us? Jax turned to face her, his expression calm but filled with determination. I believe we can make a difference. We have the technology, the resources, and the will to help you. It won't be easy, but nothing worth doing ever is. Severin nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the ruins. We have seen many attempts at salvation, but each time we were let down. Your arrival was our last hope. If you fail us, there will be no more chances. Jax understood her fear. He had seen it in her eyes when they first met. The fear of hope being shattered once again. He could see the weight of her people's suffering in every word she spoke, but he wasn't about to let them down. He had made a promise to them, and he intended to keep it. "We won't fail," he said firmly. "Humanity has been through its own struggles. We understand what it means to fight for survival. We won't stop until we've done everything we can." Severin regarded him for a long moment before speaking again. "Very well, Commander. I will place my trust in you. But know this, you are not just saving our planet. You are saving an entire people. If you fail, we will be lost." Jax nodded, knowing how much was at stake. He didn't just want to save the Valorians, he wanted to give them a future. He wanted them to have a chance to rebuild, to thrive once more. He would do everything in his power to ensure that their story didn't end in tragedy. Over the next few weeks, the humans and Valorians worked side by side, using every tool at their disposal. The Eclipse's advanced technology began to make a visible difference. The air purifier systems were repaired, and within days, the skies began to clear. The oceans were treated with specialized agents to neutralize the toxins, and engineers worked on restoring the planet's power grids. But it wasn't just the technology that was making a difference. The Valorians were learning from the humans too. The human crews showed them new farming techniques, ones that could help restore the soil and produce crops once again. Valorians who had once given up hope now worked with renewed energy, their faces filled with determination. Dr. Turner was one of the first to see the fruits of their labor. He had been working with the Valorian scientists to develop a new system for regenerating the planet's plants. The results were promising. Crops were beginning to sprout again, and the first signs of recovery were visible. "Look at this," Dr. Turner said, beaming as he showed Jax a small patch of land where green shoots were emerging from the soil. "This is just the beginning. If we can keep this up, we'll have a fully restored ecosystem within a few years." Jax smiled, feeling a sense of pride in the work they had done. "That's good news, but we can't stop here. We need to make sure the recovery is sustainable." "I agree," Dr. Turner replied. "It'll take time, but we're on the right path." The Valorians, too, were beginning to believe in the possibility of a future. Severin had been hesitant at first, but she could see the changes happening around her. The once dying world was starting to breathe again. The skies were clearing, the oceans were healing, and the crops were growing. The Valorians had always been proud of their culture, and now, for the first time in years, they were beginning to feel a spark of hope. One evening, as Jack stood overlooking the city with Severin, he realized just how much had changed. The once quiet streets were now filled with people working together, rebuilding their homes, their communities, and their lives. "You've done it," Severin said quietly, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've given us a chance to live again. We owe you more than words can express." Jax turned to her, his heart heavy with the knowledge that their work was far from over. "We've only just begun. There's still so much to do." And with that, Jax and the crew of the Eclipse knew that they had accomplished something incredible. They had given the Valorians the one thing they had lost: hope. And with that hope, the future seemed bright once more. They had proven that when one species reached out to help another, the impossible could become possible. And as long as humanity was there to stand by their side, the Valorians would have a future to look forward to. As the days turned into weeks, the cooperation between humanity and the Valorians deepened. Every effort to restore the planet was met with enthusiasm from both sides. The work was hard, but each day brought new progress. The humans, with their advanced technology, and the Valorians, with their deep knowledge of their planet, had created a partnership that seemed almost unstoppable. But not all was smooth sailing. There were still challenges to face. The planet's ecosystem was delicate, and though the initial recovery was promising, there were moments when it seemed as though the damage had been too great. The human crew often worked late into the night, adjusting their technology, analyzing new data, and making sure everything was on track. Commander Jax Riker was relentless in his determination to see the mission through, but even he knew they had to be careful. One wrong move could undo all of their hard work. Dr. Elias Turner and his team of scientists were focused on one of the biggest hurdles, restoring the atmosphere. Valoria's once thick air had thinned, and the planet's weather systems had grown unpredictable. To fix this, the team had developed a plan to launch a series of atmospheric stabilizers that would work in tandem with the planet's natural cycles to slowly rebuild the atmosphere to its former state. But the technology had never been used on such a scale before. "There's a lot riding on this," Dr. Turner said one evening as he stood in front of a holographic map of the planet. "If these stabilizers don't work, we could set back the recovery by decades." Jack stood beside him, his eyes scanning the data. "We're not going to fail. We have a plan, and we have the will. Let's make this work." The crew of the Eclipse had been working non-stop for days, and now they had reached a critical point. The stabilizers were ready, and the launch was set for the following morning. It was a tense night. Everyone on the ship could feel the weight of what was about to happen. If this mission succeeded, it would be a turning point in the recovery of Valoria. If it failed, everything they had worked for would be in jeopardy. Severin, the Valorian leader, had remained cautiously optimistic throughout the process. She had placed her trust in humanity, but the scars of years of failure were still fresh on her heart. She understood the significance of this mission, but she couldn't help but fear the worst. "Commander Riker," Severin said quietly, meeting Jax outside the control room. "I've heard whispers among my people. They are afraid. They fear that even with your help, Valoria will never truly recover." Jax looked at her, his expression steady. "It's understandable. The Valorians have been through a lot, but we're here, together, and that makes all the difference. This planet has been through difficult times, and it's not over yet. But I promise you, we will see this through. No one is giving up. Not now. Not ever." Severin took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing ever so slightly. "You speak with conviction, Commander. I can only hope that your words are as strong as your actions." Jack smiled. "They are. Now let's get those stabilizers online." The next morning, the moment of truth arrived. The stabilizers, a series of powerful devices designed to release specific particles into the atmosphere, were ready for activation. Each device was linked to a central control system that would monitor the planet's atmospheric conditions and adjust the output as needed. The human and Valorian teams stood together, watching as the countdown began. The silence in the room was heavy. For months, the crew had worked tirelessly, but now, they had reached the moment where their efforts would either bear fruit or come crashing down. The eyes of every crew member, every Valorian, were fixed on the control screens. Firing stabilizers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The stabilizers powered up, and the first wave of particles was released into the atmosphere. The team watched with bated breath as the data began to roll in. The particles were interacting with the atmosphere as expected, causing a gradual increase in the oxygen levels. The first signs of improvement were subtle, but they were there. "Initial readings are promising," Dr. Turner said, his voice tinged with relief. "It's working." But the work didn't stop there. The stabilizers had to be monitored constantly to ensure that the atmosphere was recovering without any unforeseen issues. The human and Valorian teams worked together in perfect synchrony, making adjustments when needed, recalibrating systems, and ensuring that every step was taken with precision. Over the next few weeks, the results were even more encouraging. The air on Valoria was clearing up. The toxic clouds that had once choked the planet began to dissipate, and the temperature gradually stabilized. The skies, once gray and hazy, began to show hints of blue. The change was slow, but it was real. The Valorians, who had once looked up at the sky with fear and sorrow, now looked up with hope. As Jack stood on the observation deck one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Severin joined him. The sky was no longer the dull gray it had once been. It was full of vibrant colors, a sign of the planet's slow but steady recovery. "Your people have done something incredible, Commander," Severin said, her voice soft, but full of gratitude. You've shown us that even when all seems lost, there is still hope. Jax turned to her, a smile on his face. Hope is what keeps us going. It's what has always kept humanity going. And together, we're proving that even the darkest times can give way to a brighter future. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, there was a sense of certainty in the air. The Valorians were not alone anymore. Humanity had stood beside them when others turned away, and together, they were rebuilding a world that had once seemed beyond saving. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but Jax Riker and the crew of the Eclipse were ready. They had not only saved a planet, they had rekindled the spirit of unity, showing that when different species come together with purpose, they can achieve the impossible. As the months passed, the partnership between humanity and the Valorians grew stronger. The work was far from over, but the progress was undeniable. Valoria's skies had cleared, and its atmosphere was slowly returning to its natural state. The once barren landscape had begun to show signs of life, with plants and small animals reappearing in areas that had long been abandoned. It was a remarkable sight, a planet once on the brink of collapse now beginning to heal, thanks to the combined efforts of two very different species. But there were still many challenges ahead. The planet's ecosystems were fragile, and the work to restore its balance required careful attention. The Valorians, who had long lived in harmony with their planet, were eager to help, but many of them had grown discouraged after years of failure. Commander Jax Riker could see that the Valorians were still hesitant, holding on to their doubts despite the visible progress. They needed more than just technical assistance. They needed to believe in the future again. One evening, after another long day of work, Jax met with Severin, the Valorian leader, in the observation room. The view of Valoria's recovering landscape stretched out before them. The setting sun cast a warm glow across the horizon, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like there was hope. "You've done something extraordinary, Jax," Severin said softly, her eyes on the planet below. "But I can sense that my people are still uncertain. Even with all that has been achieved, they're not sure if this planet can truly be saved." Jax understood. It wasn't just about fixing the planet anymore. It was about healing the hearts and minds of the Valorians. They had lived through so much pain, and even the smallest setback had the potential to undo the progress they had made. Their trust, though earned, was still fragile. "I know they're hesitant," Jax replied, his voice steady. "But we've come this far together. I believe in them. They've already shown that they have the strength to rebuild. Now they just need to see that they're not alone in this. We're in this together, all the way." Severin looked at him, a faint smile appearing on her face. "Your words bring me comfort. But I wonder, Commander, do you think we'll ever truly be able to rebuild the trust that was lost?" Jax paused, thinking for a moment. Trust is something that takes time to rebuild. But with every step forward, we're proving that we can be trusted. The more we work side by side, the more that belief will grow. And when that happens, the Valorians will find their hope again. Severin nodded thoughtfully. She had always been a leader of action, but the weight of her people's uncertainty had taken a toll on her. Yet something about Jax's unwavering confidence gave her the strength to keep going. Together, they could make the impossible happen. In the following weeks, the crew of the Eclipse continued to assist the Valorians with their recovery efforts. But now, there was a renewed sense of optimism. The Valorians were taking a more active role in the restoration process, with many of them using their deep knowledge of the planet to suggest new approaches and solutions. The partnership was evolving into something more equal, a true collaboration between two species who had come to respect each other deeply. Dr. Elias Turner, the chief scientist, was excited by the new developments. The Valorians had begun to experiment with natural ways to enhance the planet's healing process, using their ancient knowledge of plant life and the environment. The combination of human technology and Valorian wisdom was proving to be a powerful force. In just a short amount of time, They had successfully restored entire regions that had once been nothing but wastelands. But it wasn't just the scientists who were contributing to the restoration. Every member of the Eclipse crew, from the engineers to the medics, was involved in the effort. The crew's camaraderie was stronger than ever, and the bonds they had formed with the Valorians were unbreakable. There was a sense of unity that transcended species, a shared commitment to saving a planet that had been given up for lost. One day, as Jax was overseeing a new project to plant trees in one of the newly restored areas, Severin approached him with a new plan. "I've been thinking about something," she began, her voice hesitant. "My people have always been stewards of Valoria, but we've been too focused on our own survival to remember the deeper connection we had with the land. I want to ask you for something. I want to invite the humans to take part in a new tradition, one that will symbolize the unity between our two peoples." Jax raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What kind of tradition?" Severin smiled, a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. "A planting ceremony, a symbol of hope, rebirth, and unity. We will plant a tree in the heart of every city we restore, and we will invite the humans to join us. It will be a reminder of the bond we formed, and every tree will stand as a testament to our shared future." Jax thought for a moment, then nodded. "I think that's a wonderful idea. Let's do it." The first planting ceremony was held in the restored city of Arav, where a great tree was planted in the center of the city square. The humans and Valorians stood side by side, planting the tree with care and reverence. It was a simple act, but one filled with meaning. As the tree's roots settled into the soil, it symbolized the deep roots of their partnership, strong, enduring, and ever-growing. As the days went on, more ceremonies followed, and with each one, the Valorians began to see what they had once lost. They had lost their trust in the future, but now, with humanity by their side, they were learning to hope again. Together, they were not just rebuilding a planet. They were rebuilding a future for their people, one step at a time. As the seasons passed, the partnership between humanity and the Valorians became more than just a collaboration. It became a symbol of what could be accomplished when two species worked together for a common purpose. The planet Valoria, once on the edge of collapse, was thriving once more. It was no longer just a lifeless world struggling to survive. It had become a place of hope, filled with the promise of new beginnings. Commander Jax Riker stood on the balcony of the Eclipse, watching the sunrise over the horizon of Valoria. The sky, once choked with toxins and pollutants, was now clear and bright, casting a warm golden light over the planet's surface. The air was clean, the water was fresh, and life was returning to places where it had once been lost. It was hard to believe that this was the same planet that had once been on the brink of destruction. Jax's mind wandered back to the early days of their mission, when the Valorians had been skeptical and afraid. They had doubted humanity's ability to make a difference, unsure whether they could truly restore a world that had suffered so much. But now, as he watched the people of Valoria rebuilding their cities and nurturing the land, Jax knew that they had succeeded. They had given the Valorians something they hadn't had in years: hope. Severin, the Valorian leader, had become not only a partner, but also a close friend. Her dedication to her people had never wavered, and Jax had seen her grow from a leader struggling with doubt to one who now stood strong and confident in the future. Together, they had achieved something incredible, something that would be remembered for generations to come. The annual planting ceremonies had become a tradition on Valoria, with each city holding its own event. It wasn't just a celebration of the planet's recovery, but a reminder of the unity between humans and Valorians. The trees planted in the heart of every city stood as a living monument to their shared efforts, their resilience, and their bond. One of the most touching moments came when Severin approached Jax with an invitation for the final ceremony. "Jax, I want you to be the one to plant the last tree," she said with a gentle smile. "You've been with us every step of the way. This tree will symbolize everything we've achieved together." Jax was honored by the request. The final tree was to be planted in the capital city of Velveris, where the first human-Valorian partnership had begun. It was a moment that would mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new, brighter future. The ceremony was held in a grand square, surrounded by the citizens of Velthoris. The people gathered in silence, their faces filled with anticipation. The tree, a symbol of strength, growth, and renewal, was carefully lowered into the ground, and Jax took a deep breath before placing it into its final resting place. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers filling the air as the tree's roots took hold in the rich soil. Severin stood beside Jax, her hand resting on his shoulder. "We've done it," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "This is just the beginning of a new era for Veloria, and for all of us." Jax smiled and nodded. "It's only the beginning. There's still so much to do, but I believe in you, Severin. I believe in all of you, and I know that together we can achieve anything." The people of Veloria celebrated long into the night. There were dances, songs, and feasts as everyone came together to celebrate the world they had saved. The human and Velorian crews of the Eclipse joined in the festivities, dancing alongside their Velorian counterparts, their laughter filling the streets. It was a moment of pure joy, a time to reflect on how far they had come and to look forward to the future they had built together. As the stars sparkled above, Jax stood beside Severin, his heart swelling with pride. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had been worth every challenge, every setback, and every moment of uncertainty. They had not only saved a planet, they had built a lasting friendship, one that would endure for generations. Severin turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Jax, I think there is one thing that I've learned from all of this. It's that no matter how dire the situation may seem, there is always hope. There is always a way forward. And when we come together, we can create something beautiful, no matter the odds." Jax looked out over the city, feeling the weight of her words. He had come to understand the truth in them over the past months. In a galaxy full of uncertainty, they had proven that even the darkest of times could be overcome. They had restored not only a planet, but also the faith that had been lost long ago. "We've made history today, Severin," Jax said quietly, "and we're going to keep making it, one step at a time." Severin nodded, her eyes reflecting the light of the stars. "Yes, we are. Together." And with that, they both looked up at the sky above, knowing that this was only the beginning of a future where no species would ever have to face its struggles alone. The galaxy was vast, but humanity had proven that when one species reached out to help another, there was no limit to what they could achieve together. Veloria was a world reborn, and its future had never been brighter.